Good afternoon, everyone. I am responsible for the Inquiring Minds monthly meeting under the auspices of Toronto Mensa. I warmly welcome you to this Zoom edition of Toronto Mensa Inquiring Minds. My name is Kathleen Smith. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Alejandra Guerrero. In the announcements for this webinar, you will have read that Dr. Guerrero has been living and working in Dubai. Now, with the current instability in that region, Alejandra has moved back to her home base in Bogota, Colombia, and she's speaking to us today from there. Dr. Guerrero is a cognitive neurologist. She works with patients at a hospital, at a rehabilitation clinic, and at a memory clinic. The term cognition refers to mental activity, such as attention, perception, memory, and learning. Thus, a cognitive neurologist studies the effects of physical problems in the brain on memory and other mental processes. We are accustomed to hearing about protecting our physical health. What is especially intriguing for me about Dr. Guerrero's work is her emphasis on protecting brain health. Are there strategies to delay the onset of dementia? Are there specific aspects of lifestyle that have an effect on brain health throughout life? Dr. Guerrero will address issues such as these in her talk. Welcome, Dr. Alejandra Guerrero.
Thank you, Dr. Kathleen, for having me and inviting me for this meeting. I'm very happy to be here. Hello to everyone. I can see that you are joining us from all over the world. So let's start here. I will share my screen. Is it fine? Can you see the slides?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. So we are going to talk today about brain health and how we can build a healthier brain across the lifespan. Because having a healthy brain is not just one day task or just a stage task. This is something that we have to do throughout all our lives. Why? Because 1 in 3 people will develop a neurological disorder at some point in their lifetime. That means 1 in 3 of us in this room. Imagine, it can be migraine, it can be stroke, it can be dementia, Parkinson's, epilepsy. So the number is huge, and that's why we need to take care and we have to grow our interest about brain health. What is brain health? For many people, brain health is something that we think about when something goes wrong. When a loved one forgets your name, when a stroke strikes out of nowhere, or when you start noticing your own memory slips. The idea is that we shift the narrative and we don't wait for disease and we don't wait for things to go wrong. Because if we shift the narrative and we treat brain health not just as the absence of disease, but as the foundation of our entire human experience, things will be much different. Because we need our brain to think, to feel, to connect, to create, and to age. So I want to take you beyond disease to explore how every stage of life, from childhood to adulthood, offers opportunities to build a healthier, stronger, and more resilient brain. And this is something that shocks me a lot And it's that we've been talking about brain health only in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years, not even 20 years. If you see this is the number of papers and publications in PubMed, scientific publications, talking about brain health. They started to grow in 2011, so only 15 years. And the interest on talking about this brain health has been growing, and it's going to be higher in the future, but it's only in the last 10 years. And the brain, it's our most important organ. It's the organ that defines who we are, how we think, feel, love, how we make decisions. So this is really shocking that we've been focusing only on disease. But what is brain health? This is the definition of WHO about brain health. And it's a state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, social, emotional, behavioral, and motor domains. If you see, this is everything. And brain health, when our brain is healthy, it allows us to realize our full potential. And this happens over the life course. And this is irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. So remember, it's not just about avoiding illness. It's about building a thriving, resilient mind through our life. And when our brains are healthier, this is not only good for us, it's also good for our families. And it's also good for the economy of our societies, because we will have all our capacity at its full, and we will be able to do better things. So we have some determinants of brain health, and this is the WHO definition that they tell us that these determinants go through all our life course. Because as you saw, brain health is not only having the brain functioning as we might think, but it's also about physical health, for example. If the brain is healthy and if you focus on brain health, you will have overall wellness, because the risk factors that cause brain disease are also the same, for example, that cause heart disease. If we focus on this, we will manage vascular risk factors. The prevalence and incidence of chronic conditions will be less. And our nutrition, exercise, all the lifestyle changes that we can do will be much better. To have a healthy brain, we also need healthy environments. We need to reduce the exposure to pollution and toxins. We need to ensure that our water is clean, that the air is clean, and all the environmental factors that affect the brain. Safety and security. One of the biggest causes of brain disease is head trauma. So we have to prevent injuries on our head. And pitifully, with all this war situation in our world, violence and war, it's another cause of head trauma. So as a society, we need to work on ways to avoid people having head trauma to protect our brains. Learning and social connection, it's another huge determinant of brain health. Education, cognitive stimulation, social engagement and inclusion. And this will build cognitive reserve, that I will tell you what is cognitive reserve next in the talk. And we also need to have access to quality services, availability of healthcare, ways to screen and detect things when they are early and not in late stages, and interventions to do something if we find any problem with our brains. When we address all these determinants from early age to old age, we can optimize our brain health. And as I said before, this will bring multiple benefits, because the rate of neurological diseases is going to decrease. We will have better mental health. We will have better quality of life. And this will be, again, also for our economy and our societies overall. Brain health, it's human health. And brain health, human health is connected also with our environment. So if you want to think about it, brain health is everything, because the brain is the organ that allows us to do all that we do as human beings. So we have, and our brain will be affected, of course, by our environment. So we only not have our internal exposures, but we also have our external exposures. And this is what we call the exposome. The internal exposome are all the things that will affect our brain from within. And the external exposome are all the things that affect our brain from the outside. The idea is to find a balance between this internal exposome and external exposome to build a healthier brain. And that's why brain health needs a comprehensive approach. Brain health is not something that we manage or we talk about only in the clinics. We need to talk about brain health in our communities, in our families, in societies. The brain needs to be first, because as you see, all our lives as human beings are affected. The health of our brain is affected of how we live our lives in our individual world and in our societies and communities. And that's why we need to do this approach. We need to approach brain health from the individual aspect, which is more focused on lifestyle, how you eat, how you take care of your mental health, how you sleep, how you do physical activity. This is the things that will help us to preserve our brain. But we can also do things to prevent and protect. And this is the control of chronic diseases like hypertension or high blood pressure, high levels of sugar, high levels of cholesterol. Our hearing health is also very important. Reducing the consumption of alcohol and tobacco. All these things will help us to prevent diseases and to protect our brain. And as I said before, we need to plan our societies and we need to go beyond these individual things that we can do. And we can promote, and we have to promote social policies that are focused on the brain. We have to fight for our air quality measures to reduce the pollution, because this is a huge cause of brain diseases. We have to promote spaces for education. And of course, we have to involve politicians and all the people that make and take decisions to include the brain in their approaches. Something that we have to understand and that I want you to take from this talk is that the brain is a dynamic organ. The brain never stays static. And this is thanks to an ability that the brain has that it's called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's capacity to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections or even new neurons. Before, if you've read about brain science or neuroscience, let's say 20 years ago, we used to say that you were born with a number of neurons and you will die with less neurons, but it was impossible to grow new cells. new neurons. And now we know that this is not true. We can have new neurons even in late stages of life. It's always possible to grow baby neurons. And this is amazing because if you know that you can protect your brain and on top of that you can have new neurons, I think this is something that will motivate people to work on their brains. So, and this is what we call neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is this growing of new neurons, not in the whole brain, but in specific areas. For example, when you exercise, you grow new neurons in the hippocampus, which is the area for memory, and which is the area that it's affected at first in Alzheimer's disease. Only exercising. So this is amazing. And this is something that we just recently have been talking about. As I said before, all these things about brain health are quite new. The American Academy of Neurology launched in 2024 their action plan for brain health across the lifetime. So we start in the childhood stage where we need to build the best foundations for our brains. Then, during adolescence, the idea is that the brain will reach its individual potential. Then, in adulthood, our task, our job is to maximize that potential and prevent injury. Then, in adulthood or late life, if something happens, we need to be able to provide effective intervention, rehabilitation, and recovery. And the idea is that all these things that we do throughout life will help us to have a great quality of life in our late ages. And the final goal is to have quality of life and independence, and that you feel that your life is fulfilled. So let's talk about a little bit in every stage. Brain health begins before birth. Everything that happens to the mother physically and emotionally will shape the early brain. So if you see here, these are the weeks of brain development. By the third week of pregnancy, the neural tube has already formed. By the third week, this structure is what will become in the brain in the later stages of development. In this moment, neurons are generated, and they generate an extraordinary rate, organizing into circuits that will lay the foundation for everything, from movement, memory, emotion, and cognition. So in this stage, the brain is highly sensitive, and maternal health, nutrition, stress levels, and environmental exposures play a crucial role in shaping the trajectory of this developing brain. This is in the womb. Then, when the child is born, from birth to age 3, the brain grows faster than ever, and it will reach 80% of its adult size by age 3 and 90% by age 5. Every experience, every word, everything that we do at this stage is wiring the brain. This is when the brain will start to learn, will develop attention and emotional regulation. So that's why it's one of the most important stages for our brain. And I want you to think about this. Imagine two babies. They are born on the same morning in the same city. They don't have complications during their delivery and they have perfect health. She's called Asia. Asia goes home to a calm, steady environment. Her mom is able to take maternity leave, so she breastfeeds her exclusively for the first months. Her parents talk to her all the time. They say her name. They describe what they are doing. They read little books. They show her colors, shapes, and toys. There's music at home, cuddles, and she has a routine: naps, meals, playtime, bedtime. Nothing fancy, just time, attention, and emotional safety. Her environment is telling her, you are safe. You can explore and you can learn about the world. We have the other baby. His name is Luis. He is also born into a family that loves him, but their circumstances are harder. His mom wants to breastfeed him too, but she has to go back to work almost immediately after delivery because her job doesn't allow breaks. There's no private space to pump, and her milk supplies drop. He switches to formula early, so he misses out on extra bonding time, the skin to skin, and the natural back and forth responsiveness that often happens during breastfeeding. At home, life is loud and rushed. His parents work for long hours, and sometimes the TV is on because it's the only way to keep him occupied while they are finishing other tasks. His sleep routines are inconsistent. When he cries, his parents are not always there to answer his needs because they are busy doing other things. What is his young brain learning? Be alert. The world is unpredictable. Then, when they are 5, Aisha goes to her first day in the school. She knows a lot of words. She can stay focused a bit longer during circle time. She's used to routines, so the rhythm of school feels familiar. She has an easy time calming down when she is frustrated. She feels confident when she tries new things because she had all these first years of encouragement. The teachers describe her as curious, attentive, or fast learner. Luis arrives with some hurdles. He may get frustrated more quickly. Sitting still during a lesson feels harder. He might struggle with transitions or new routines, and sometimes he avoids tasks that feel too hard. He may have a shorter attention span, and this is not because he's bad. It's because his early years were filled with stress, noise, and unpredictability. And the teachers will tell that he is bright but distracted, or that he needs a little more support. He was born in the same conditions as Asia. He is as intelligent as Asia, but those first 5 years gave him a heavier backpack, not a physical one, because his brain, it's the same as Asia. But he was filled with early stress, fewer opportunities for language, inconsistent sleep, and less interaction. And what we can see here, it's a story of opportunity because his brain still stays plastic. His brain can still change with safety, nutrition, stimulation, and care. His brain can still grow stronger. And these trajectories can change. But if we don't do, as a society, if we don't do anything, he will have a harder life. His life will have more problems only because of these early life conditions. And that's why this needs to go beyond the clinics and beyond our communities. This needs to go to the politicians because we have the power and the responsibility of investing in childhood and investing in that the kids and all the children have these opportunities that will allow them to have a better life in the future. Then we have the second window of neuroplasticity, which is adolescence. We all know that this is the stage of chaos, hormones, emotions, rebellion. But it's also a window to change the brain, because the teenage brain is rewiring the connections all the time. And at this stage, all the emotional regulation skills are happening, and they are growing if we make them grow. This is where we learn to make decisions. This is where we learn about our identity. And this is the first stage where habits are formed now. Habits around sleep, exercise, learning, and coping with emotions. So that's why working with teenagers in emotional regulation is very important. And as I told you, habits are also forming this stage. So this is where prevention truly begins. If we support mental health, education, and social connection at this stage, we are already preventing dementia for this generation. Then we have adulthood. And in adulthood, we have the critical decades. Because in adolescence, we are starting to form these habits, but in adulthood is where we are going to practice them for the next 20 to 30 years. And adulthood, we can see it as early adulthood and late adulthood. But even in the early adulthood, it's a key stage to preserve our brain health because of the habits. Because, for example, all the exposure to tobacco or to cigars, to smoke, it's happening in this time. Use of alcohol, use of any substance that can damage the brain. And this is the stage where chronic stress is starting to peak or starting to appear. So all the behaviors or all the things that we do in this early adulthood are the behaviors that we will see in people in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. This is the starting of our diseases or our health. Because if you start smoking at 25 years old, if you start smoking even earlier, people start smoking earlier, 20 years old, starting drinking, starting having fast food. When we go further and when we go to 30s, 40s, you will start seeing the chronic diseases appearing. And these diseases and these behaviors will be risk factors for the future of our brain. So what are the things that we can do in adulthood to protect our brain? For years, and almost everybody knows that how to prevent or how to take care of the heart, because cardiovascular health was in the center of the stage, and for a good reason, of course. We all know someone that has died from a heart attack. But what people don't know is that the same habits that protect the heart are also protecting the brain. And we just need to add the brain to this conversation. Every choice you make for your body, movement, nutrition, stress reduction, sleep, is also an investment in your cognitive health. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. And today I want to talk about 3 habits that act as powerful protectors for the brain. And these are the tools that we all need to do throughout our whole life to keep our brains healthy. The first one is exercise. Exercise is not just good for your body, it's a transformation for your brain. How much of exercise? The recommendation is that we do 150 minutes of aerobic activity per week. When we do aerobic activity, which is like running or brisk walking or doing something more extreme that pumps your heart, we are increasing the blood flow and the oxygen to our brain. And this stimulates something that is called BDNF. BDNF, it's a substance that it's like the fertilizer for the neurons. And when this BDNF is increased, we will have neurogenesis, which is the new neurons that we can build even in adulthood or even in late life. And these neurons are not also going to grow new, but they are going to get stronger connections. And if they get stronger and if they are new and if we have more connections, our brain is going to be stronger and it's going to be more resilient. And if you combine this aerobic activity with strength training twice per week, the combo will be perfect because strength training doesn't grow new neurons, but makes the neurons that you already have stronger, especially in the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain that we use to make decisions. So remember, movement is medicine, not only for your bodies, but also for your brain and your mind. The second thing that we can do is nutrition, because food is not just fuel, it's information for our brain cells. What's the problem? That we usually associate the word diet with restriction and limits. Foods that are forbidden, things that we cannot take, or schedule or timing. So people try the diets for a while and they forget about it. Today, I want you to think nutrition about patterns. So we will call this dietary patterns. What is this? It's your eating style. It's the patterns that you eat over days, weeks, months, and years. But if one day you don't follow this pattern, or one day you want to take something that it's not allowed, nothing happens because the rest of the time you are eating accordingly to the pattern and you are eating healthy for your brain. What's the best evidence that we have? It's the Mediterranean and the mind diet. Remember, not diet, dietary pattern. These patterns are rich in leafy greens, berries, olive oil, nuts, fish, and whole grains. All these groups of food are linked to lower the risk of Alzheimer's disease and slower cognitive decline. Why? Because these foods provide antioxidants, omega-3, and polyphenols. They reduce inflammation and they reduce oxidative stress, which are drivers of brain aging. In the Mediterranean and mind diet patterns, we have to avoid high sugar, diets with high sugar, processed food, and saturated fats, like the ones that we have, for example, in too much cheese, because this accelerates neurodegeneration. If you eat like this most of the time during your whole life, this will reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease. So remember, your fork is a neuroprotective tool, and you have to treat it like that. Every time that you have in front of you food or something that you want to eat, think twice. Is this going to be good for my brain, or no. And only thinking about that, sometimes you will be able to say no to things that are not good for you. So remember, your fork is a neuroprotective tool. The third thing that we all have to do is stress management. Most of us have stress or have felt stress at some point during the last week, I will say. And that is one of the epidemics of mental health nowadays. Because we all have stress, and the problem with stress is that we normalize stress. And normalizing stress is the worst thing that we can do. Because when we normalized it, stress becomes chronic. And what causes stress, what happens with the stress is chronic, is that it will decrease the function of our brain, and even it will kill neurons. Research has shown that chronic stress and high levels of cortisol cause shrinking in the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain that we use for memory. And it's the area that gets affected in Alzheimer's disease. So this chronic stress, this cortisol is toxic for our brain. And we will see its effects on impaired memory. And now what I'm seeing in the clinic, for example, it's young people in midlife, 40, 50 years old, with memory problems. And when we dig deeper and we see what's the cause, I will say 90% of the times is stress. So that's why it's so important to find a way to manage stress. There are many ways. For example, exercise is one of the best ways to manage stress. You are doing two things at the same time. You are working for your brain, and you are also reducing the stress only doing exercise. And finally, we have late life. And we talk about late life after 65 years old. And at this point, it becomes more personal, you know. Some people stay sharp and joyful until their 90s, but others can experience decline. The chances of having a neurological disease in late life increase because, for example, age itself is one of the strongest risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, for Parkinson's disease. But even in this stage, neuroplasticity doesn't disappear. The aging brain remains capable of adapting, reorganizing, and strengthening these networks. And this is why, at this stage, you can also maintain your curiosity, your creativity. Having social engagement in this stage is key to promote brain health. The most important thing here is to have joy in life, to enjoy all the things that you do. Because for some people, this is the age of retirement, and for some people, this is the end of life. It's not. It's the opportunity that you have to do all the things that you wanted to do and you couldn't because you didn't have time. This is the time to learn new things. This is the time to have new friends. This is the time to go out and walk and do whatever you want, but always keeping in mind that you can do all these things and that you are doing all these things for your brain. I want to tell you a brief story about one of my patients. She's 72 years old, and she had this brain tumor. This white thing that you see here, it's a brain tumor. And as you see, it's big. It's like the size of a tennis ball. And she had to have surgery because of this. And one part of her brain was removed, which is this black thing that we see here. This was the tumor. This was after the surgery. Of course, after a surgery like this, she had to stay in the ICU. She was in a severe condition for a couple of weeks. And after the surgery and after recovering from the acute phase of this condition, she had motor problems, she had depression, and her brain was foggy. So she came to my office and she told me that she wanted to do everything possible to improve her health. I told her, I need you to find a physical activity or something that you enjoy doing and that you can do consistently. That was my only advice. Move, do physical activity that you enjoy. This is one of the most important things. You have to enjoy the physical activity because if you enjoy it, you can stay consistent. So she did it. She came after 3 months and she chose to do this hula hoop. And look, she is moving the hula hoops with her arms. That's something super difficult to do it at the same time. She was also doing hip movements with the hula hoop, and everybody around her was involved in this activity. Her family, even some workers that were working on her house, she told them to do the hula hoops, and she told me that people were laughing and people were telling her that this was amazing. And after 3 months of doing this, she was very skilled doing this, better than many young people. I even tried. She asked me to try it. I couldn't do it. And she was happy, her memory was better, and she was walking like she almost recovered fully after having that surgery, only doing hula hoops. So this is amazing. And this is the power of neuroplasticity. And this is the living proof that brain health is not just the absence of disease. Disease can happen, but we have to use our brains with the tools that we have to live fully with purpose and joy. The idea is that we treat brain aging as a lifelong task. As if we take this life course approach, we will delay brain aging. And if disease appears, our brains won't suffer that much. But if we don't take care of these risk factors, we will have accelerated brain aging, and it will be easier for these diseases, these neurodegenerative diseases that happen. So remember, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The same applies to your brain. It's never too early and never too late to start protecting it. And I want to end with this question. If you had the chance, through simple lifestyle changes that we saw, nutrition, movement, and stress management, to reduce the risk of forgetting your loved ones and protect your memories, your identity, your very essence, would you take it? Thank you.
Well, Dr. Guerrero, that just is fascinating. Just fascinating. I've learned so much, and it's such an encouraging and hopeful talk and lots of new information. So I did encourage people to put questions in as we went along. So we received one from the United Kingdom while you were talking. Paul says, is there any research that indicates the weighting, the weights that internal exposome versus external exposome has on overall brain health?
Yes and no, because we are research, it's working right now of the integration of this exposome. At the moment, the focus has been more in internal exposome, our aging, our genetics, our lifestyle, and all the things that influence from within our brain health. And the external exposome, it's something that we've been talking about recently only. So the weighting and what's more important than the other, no yet. But for example, for Alzheimer's disease, that we know that 45% of the cases of Alzheimer's disease will be prevented if we work on these risk factors. We only have one environmental factor, which is air pollution. And this is 2% of the cases of Alzheimer's disease could be prevented if we address air pollution. The rest are part of the internal exposome. So we can make our assumptions from here. If it's 45% risk factors and the air pollution is only 2%, it will be around 43% from the internal exposome. But this is changing because brain health is multidimensional and there's lots of social factors and economic factors and environmental factors that need to be addressed at the same time to give like an exact response to that question.
Thank you. Lauren is asking, is there any research on premature birth and its relation to brain health?
Yeah, sure. All the cases of premature brain birth, they have less development that babies that are born on time. So that's why premature babies, usually they go through programs to have more stimulation and to have treatment and therapy that will put them in the same stage as babies that were born on time, because their brains didn't have the time to develop in the womb. But they can always go forward and they can always catch up with the babies that are born on time. But of course, next extra care needs to take for these babies.
So they can catch up.
Yes, they can catch up always.
Okay. David is asking now, stressful, vigorous aerobic exercise creates neurogenesis in the hippocampus via BDNF. Does it also shrink the hippocampus as a result of the stress, the pain, and the cortisol?
Okay, so what we recommend is not a stressful, vigorous aerobic activity. We recommend activity that it's moderate. And because stress, when you put the brain under stressful conditions, you will have the opposite effect. So something that he is mentioning actually in his question, it can cause stress, the cortisol will peak, and you will cause the other effect for the brain. So the amount or the type of exercise that is healthy for the brain, it's moderate physical activity, 150 minutes of moderate aerobic physical activity. If it's vigorous physical activity, it's only 75 minutes per week. And even there is research about people doing marathons, for example, and they will lose myelin in their brain. This change is something that is transient. After 2 months, the myelin will go back, but it's changing the brain. So getting obsessed with exercise is not about doing a lot and pushing our bodies to the limit, but doing it moderate and consistently through our life.
Wow. Gary asks, is there any benefit from mind exercises such as chess, Sudoku, crosswords, and so on?
Okay, in this type of exercises, you get good doing them. So if you do Sudoku all the time, you get good doing Sudokus, and that's it. And you need a skill, a brain skill to do Sudokus. But this is not stimulating the brain. So it's better to do different things. Because what happens is that some people think that when they are doing this type of mind exercises or when they are using an app, they are already protecting their brain. And that's not true. They are only getting good at doing crosswords. So, for example, crosswords need some memory and language ability, but it doesn't use other types of abilities. So this is, I will say, 10% of brain training. It's good to do it, and if you enjoy doing it, it's fine. But you have to do different things, variety. The brain loves variety and novelty.
Okay, interesting. Elka, what are the genetic implications in brain health?
So genetics, we know that many neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease have a genetic influence. There's a type of Alzheimer's that it's inherited, and there are also genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, for Parkinson's disease, for many neurodegenerative conditions. But we know that genetics don't give the last word because of neuroplasticity. So even if you have a genetic risk factors that there are many genes that are involved with this disease, even if you have this risk because of your genetics, there are many things that you can do to change the genetics. So they are not the last word.
Okay, so the risk factor is there, but you still need some kind of a trigger.
Yes.
Without the trigger, you might be fine.
Yes. And this is something that happens a lot with maybe people have heard about it, ApoE4, which is the genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Many people have this genetic risk factor, but it's not the end of the story. If you do all the other things to increase your neuroplasticity and improve your brain resilience, you'll be fine. There's a high chance that you'll be fine.
Okay. Brad asks, could you explain in a bit more detail why chess is bad for my brain?
Wait, cheese?
Chess, the game of chess. Oh, sorry, you're right. Cheese.
Cheese.
Why is cheese bad for my brain?
Well, this is a controversy, actually, because the Mind Diet says that cheese is bad for the brain and that we should avoid cheese. But last year, there was a research paper that showed that cheese has a protective effect on brain health and reduces dementia. So I cannot tell you why cheese is bad for the brain because there's some evidence that actually says that cheese is good. But if we want to think about the bad part of cheese, is the amount of fat. And some cheeses are very processed and they are only industrial fat. But curated cheeses and these cheeses, I always tell that these cheeses that smell bad, they are usually good for the brain. And this is what this research showed last year. I made a publication on my LinkedIn about it because I'm a cheese lover. And having this research paper telling that cheese was protective was an amazing news for the cheese lovers.
It's tricky when there's all these studies that seem to contradict each other because it
Yes.
depends on so many factors, like, what the research design was and who they recruited as subjects and so on.
Yeah.
So,
This was observational and show association, no causation. But
okay. So it's useful to read both sides and
yeah,
then consider all of that when you're deciding what to do. Okay,
yeah.
John, fabulous presentation. You provide much about which to think about and act on. Are you able to provide copies of your slides, particularly with the risks and the solutions across the stages of life, or a recommended bibliography? Many thanks. And I will say that we are recording this webinar and it will go up on my personal YouTube channel, Kathleen W. Smith. So that's part of an answer to that question.
Yeah, and I can provide the slides. Yes.
Okay. Michael, are omega-3 supplements worth it in general?
With omega-3, it's better if you eat the fish. All the omega-3 that you need, it's in fish. Fatty fish like salmon and sardines from 2 to 3 times a week. If you are not able to have this amount of fish during the week, omega-3 supplements are worth it. But you don't have to take them every day. You can take them 2 or 3 times a week, replacing the fish. But it's always better to have the food, real food.
Better to have the real food than the supplements.
Yes.
Okay. Gwyneth. Gwyneth says, you mentioned saturated fat as a risk factor. So what does this mean for people who eat a paleo diet and who strive to increase their saturated fat? One example is, she names Professor Jordan Peterson.
Okay. Well, if we take the brain perspective, it's bad. All this diet, paleo diet, keto diet, all the diets that have this amount of fat, like they promote high amounts of fat consumption, are not good for the brain, and they are not good for overall health. There's a paper, I don't remember the journal at the moment, but they make a comparison of all the diets that are available in the market for health and wellness, and paleo and keto are the worst for everything.
There you go.
Yeah.
Peter says, would emotional therapy be the correct path to addressing the learning center of the brain, especially for someone whose learning center has been blocked?
Well, there are many types of emotional therapy. But yes, of course, as I said before, the brain, it's a very complex organ with very complex functions and domains, and the emotional domain is one of the most important that we have on our brains. So every kind of therapy or approach that we can do to improve our mental health will improve also brain health, because it will give you mechanisms to cope better with your emotions, to reduce stress, to change the way that you respond to life stressors and everything. So yes, it can improve, and for sure, improving mental health, we are also improving brain health.
Okay, I have a question, or a comment at least. Last week I was listening to a neurology rounds online, and the speaker was recommending that for elderly people, it's very helpful if they have music therapy, art therapy, and a companion robot. And they should also be given opportunities to increase their self-efficacy. Like, you have to help them to choose goals for their own improvement. Everybody's goals are different. And if you have them working in a group, they can help each other. So I was very interested in all of that. And I'm wondering if you could comment about having the companion robot, for example.
Okay. It's always better to have real people around us. Because loneliness is one of the biggest risk factors for Alzheimer's disease in late life. And I'm not sure that a robot can help with that and can help with the mood improvement. And maybe it can help with your agency and it can push you to different things. But if you can find a human to help you with that, I think it's better than a robot.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Yeah.
So at this point, Alejandra, I would like to say very much thank you for your fascinating talk. Really interesting insights. I learned a great deal. I'm sure there are several people who have joined us today who have learned some new things today. So thank you very much. As a small sign of our appreciation, we'll be sending you a little gift for you to enjoy.
Thank you.
And there's lots of emojis, hearts, and claps and things going up online for you there.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I can see them. Thank you so
so
much.
now in the next couple of days, I'll have a chance to go through the webinar and then send it to you. It'll take me a couple of days because I have something major going on in my life on Tuesday. So it'll be a little bit after that. Now, one person has raised his hand, and I said I wasn't going to honor that. But, let me see. No, I think I'll leave it. I'm just going to leave it. Sorry.
Okay.
Because your time is your valuable time. Okay. So
Okay.
thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who has joined us today. That's been great to have you. And remember that this webinar has been recorded and you can watch it again later. Have more fun. Okay. So thank you to everyone. I'll say goodbye now.
Bye.
Bye.